Professional wrestlers, reality television stars, sports entertainers, entrepreneurs, winemakers, business owners, mothers, WWE Hall of Famers. How many people could I really be talking about if I'm saying all of those different roles? There is really only two, Nikki and Brie Bella. Today, we are talking about two of the most polarizing women in WWE history. There's going to be an opinion on this. They are two of the women that just draw opinions out of the internet wrestling community and just the wrestling community in general. You love them, you hate them, you're completely indifferent. They draw a reaction. My name is Josh Robertson here for Love Wrestling. Ladies, gentlemen, my non-binary friends, today on Love Wrestling we're discussing two WWE Hall of Famers. We are discussing the legacy of the Bella twins. It's hard to think that it was 2008 when we first saw either of the Bella twins. Of course, Brie Bella debuting a little bit before Nikki, technically. I know they did the twin switch in the match and everything like that, and eventually got revealed that they were twins, but Brie Bella technically did debut first in the summer of 2008. It really is quite mind-boggling to think it was that long ago since we first were graced with the Bella's presence on our television screens. Now, it seems to be as soon as these ladies debuted, people had an opinion on these two. They couldn't escape it. Everyone had an opinion on the Bellas. It seemed to be the kind of, the trend at that time for women or divas in WWE. Everyone thought they were the bathroom break. I've discussed it many times. We'll all know the story of the divas. Now, of course, the Bellas were kind of ushered in between different roles, whether it was being managers, valets, whatever you want to call them, to various different superstars, or kind of being the eye candy for a lot of the guest hosts at the time, that when Monday Night Raw was going through that phase. And, it was the trend at the time that the divas really weren't wrestling all that much, and, they were just in 2 or 3 little minute matches here and there, so they weren't really known for their wrestling skills. It wasn't really until they left and then come back 11 months later in 2013 when Total Divas started and everything, when they started to kind of get more reps in the ring, and obviously with Brie being with Daniel Bryan and John Cena being with Nikki Bella at the time, you're obviously going to have great teachers in that aspect. So while their in-ring stuff was certainly evolving, and they certainly were dedicating more time to the in-ring side, as the kind of division was slowly changing, we're kind of planting seeds for what we would get a little bit later on. It was Total Divas that I want to talk about first, and actually creating their legacy. I think a lot of people undermine Total Divas, and it's just a reality show on E, but you have to understand the audience that E is reaching. It is not the same audience that Monday Night Raw is reaching, which at the time, I know it's changed a lot, and it's a little bit more family-oriented even then, but even more so now. A lot more different kinds of people are watching wrestling, but it really was getting that female demographic coming over to Monday nights to watch the Bella twins, to watch Natalya, Naomi, Cameron, whoever it was that they were gravitating towards throughout Total Divas. But Total Divas was really ushering in a new audience, and the Bellas were the two main stars of that show. Whether people want to admit it and say it was an ensemble kind of piece or not, I'm always a believer that the Bella twins were the kind of stars of Total Divas, and obviously that manifested into other things. But Total Divas is really where their legacy really started. They started to get more of a fan base outside of wrestling. The biggest problem with wrestling, I've always been a big kind of wave flagger of wrestling, but the biggest problem with wrestling is that it can't outgrow wrestling sometimes. When someone breaks out past this kind of weird little wrestling bubble that we're all in, that's when people really start to kind of get over, in my opinion. You can get over in a wrestling sense, but to get into a mainstream, to get to casuals, is another thing. I think that's where a lot of the criticisms come from with the Bellas, is that, they're not wrestlers and they're just trying to get more of an audience that's outside of wrestling, but that's all bringing eyes to wrestling. That was the kind of idea behind Total Divas, in my opinion, was to bring more eyes to wrestling. So while Total Divas was airing and they were filming, of course it was the AJ Lee versus the Total Divas storyline that ran for majority of 2013 and into 2014. Now, why Brie and Nikki both didn't win the Divas title in that that time era, it really was you were planting seeds at least of getting, okay, these ladies are getting better in the ring, whether people want to admit it or not. Brie was getting a lot more chance to shine than Nikki throughout injuries and stuff that Nikki had, but Brie was getting a lot of time to work with AJ Lee and to work with other people and starting to get more reps in the ring. Reps in the ring is how you're going to get better, and they were evolving as characters. They were certainly doing better than when their original run. I'm talking about completely in-ring, and they were getting more eyes from Total Divas. So we go through 2014 and why Total Divas is gaining steam. Of course, the big thing that was happening throughout the summer of 2014 at SummerSlam was Brie Bella versus Stephanie McMahon, playing off all the stuff with Bryan's injury and Triple H and the Authority and all of this. There was a legitimate argument that can be made that Brie and Stephanie could have main evented SummerSlam in 2014. I will argue that to the death. I believe that match could have went on last. It was main eventing a lot of Raws in the sense of segments. Women were not doing that at the time. Brie Bella was an active wrestler in 2014. She was the only full-time wrestler in the women's division, in the Divas division, that was getting the chance to go on last on Monday Night Raw. You gotta think of the time. That is a big deal. Of course, Nikki turns, and that's when it all of course, they come back together in a few months, because that's how wrestling works. But this was a big deal. They had a prominent spot on SummerSlam, the second biggest pay-per-view of the year. Now, obviously, we're not quite at the time of the Divas revolution and going into being recognized in the women's division, but we are gaining steam in the sense of, okay, there's two women here that are getting over, and you of course had AJ Lee, you had Paige at the time. There was a lot of people throughout 2014 where we're getting seeds of this, we're getting more of a role for women, and I think that's purely because of the world that was changing and because of Total Divas, and the Bellas were at the forefront of that. Of course, Nikki went on to win the Divas Championship at the end of 2014 at Survivor Series and had she is the longest reigning Divas Champion of all time. That can never be broken. She will always be the longest reigning Divas Champion of all time, purely because that championship doesn't exist anymore. And a lot of people love the fact that that title doesn't exist. I think it represented the time very, very well. I think Nikki Bella, in my opinion, is the greatest Divas Champion of all time. A lot of people will not agree with me on that, and that's okay. Wrestling is subjective, but more about the Bellas here. So throughout that longest reigning Divas Championship reign that Nikki Bella had, that's when Give Divas a Chance was happening, and of course the main roster call-ups of Sasha Banks, Charlotte, and Becky Lynch, and we had the 3-team wars, we had a prominent match at SummerSlam in 2015, we had all of these things. Now, Nikki would, of course, break her neck and have to take some time off for a long time. She had to take that time off to go and get better, and she would return in 2016. Throughout that time, Brie Bella, of course, retired, and everything happened there. She went on to have Birdie, and, Total Divas was still happening, and that's when Total Bella started, and their stock was rising. That's when the legacy really kind of is hitting a peak here, and we're going, okay, the Bellas have name value outside of WWE, and that's what everyone wants. You want to be known outside of wrestling, because if you're known inside of wrestling, cool. You're a top star in wrestling, but nobody knows who you are outside of the business, outside of that bubble. The Bellas have broken out of that bubble. Of course, at this time, when Nikki would, of course, come back, and she was really just, I think, having some of the best matches of her career. Of course, it was a different division than when they left, but of course, Nikki was around, Brie was off being a mum and enjoying that and having Birdie, and we were seeing this all unfold on Total Divas and Total Bellas. This is when the Bellas started to create that brand that I've been alluding to. Bella Radici, their wine. They started to have Birdie be their clothing company. They stepped away from Total Divas and just went to Total Bellas. They've made a name for themselves outside of wrestling. Of course, Nikki would have to retire because of all of this and her neck, and they've come back occasionally for Evolution. She main evented Evolution. I think some people forget that Nikki Bella was in the main event against Ronda Rousey. A lot of people thought that maybe Becky and Charlotte should have main evented Evolution. I was on Team Nikki and Team Ronda for this one because they were bigger than wrestling, and for the first ever, and at this point, unfortunately, the only all-female WWE pay-per-view, it's a money match to me, because you had two people that were known outside of wrestling. Now, of course, I've covered a lot here in these 8 or 9 minutes that I've been talking about the Bellas. Obviously, I have a lot of opinions and I have a lot of praise for the Bellas, and people don't. People like to get on the Bellas, have a lot of critiques saying they didn't really keep up with the rest of the division, they stole a lot of spotlight, they just come in when they want to, and whatever it may be. And you're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to those criticisms, and you're entitled to everything that you're saying. But you have to recognize at least that they made a name for themselves outside of the business. They also made a name for themselves in the evolution of their in-ring career. I think Nikki became a great in-ring performer, and I know Brie come back and had a few little hiccups with Liv Morgan and some dives and stuff like that, but hey, everyone's favorite wrestler at some point or another has had a hiccup in the ring where they've accidentally hurt someone, or they've done, they've quote-unquote botched a spot. I don't think there's really much point in me trying to defend or not defend certain spots, because I'm not a professional wrestler, so I really don't know how hard it is. But you just got to imagine that everybody has those days, and it's a part of the business. It's not ballet, as they say. But both Nikki and Brie did evolve in their in-ring stuff. I'm excited for their eventual another little run that they're going to have. I'm sure it will happen at some stage in the next few years with women's tag team championships. I think they are, in my opinion, the greatest female tag team of all time. And I know, again, people are going to be like, ugh, Josh, what are you saying? It's just my opinion, and it's just what I humbly believe. Take it with a grain of salt. But the Bellas have done a lot within WWE, outside of WWE, whether you want to call them reality TV stars, whether you want to call them winemakers, it really doesn't matter. They're cashing a lot of checks at this stage, and they've made a name for themselves outside of wrestling, which in my opinion is what you want. Is you want people that don't watch wrestling to pay attention to wrestling. To me, there will always be WWE people. That's just how I view them, because I love wrestling. But many people would view them as reality TV stars. Many people would view them as business owners, entrepreneurs, mothers. But I guess one thing that we all have to, it's not a subjective opinion here, they're WWE Hall of Famers. They've made a Hall of Fame career at just 37 years old. They're 37 years old. That is very young to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. That is very young to have a decade in the business. That is very young to be accomplished. They're accomplished talent in and out of the ring. I love success stories like that, and they cop a lot of criticism. They're role models to a lot of young women. They're role models to a lot of young men. They're role models, and they really do, to me, live up to the Bella brand, and I think there's a lot still left to come for them. Whether they're going to write another book, they're New York Times best-selling authors. There's so many things that I could hear and list about the accomplishments of Nikki and Brie Bella. But I just know that, to me, they're two of the biggest female names that you can have in this industry of all time. I really truly believe that, and I know some people are not going to agree with me. But I don't want to make this video too long here on Love Wrestling, so I will stop here. But here's the part that you're all going to love. Of course, let me know what you agree, what you disagree with in the comments below about what I've just stated. And what's your opinion on the Bella Twins? How do you feel about the Bella Twins? Do they live up to the name? Are they overhyped? Are they underhyped? Are they underrated? Are they overrated? All of the things, just let me know in the comments below, or on Twitter at JoshRobinson00. Of course, you'll see this tweet and everything like that. Give it some love if you can. Of course, all the links for my stuff will be in the description below. Of course, you can follow Love Wrestling at Love Wrestling CA on Twitter and pretty much across the board. Of course, if you liked this video, if you just enjoyed this video, scroll your mouse over to the left, scroll down a little, and click that big thumbs up button, because it makes me know that I'm doing a good job here for Love Wrestling. Of course, head over to the right of your screen, just below this video, that big red subscribe button. If you click that, it'll make sure that you can stay up to date with everything Love Wrestling. Hit the bell so you're getting notifications of when we drop new videos. But that was my videos on the legacy of the Bella Twins. I hope you enjoyed it. Until the next one, folks. Peace out.